We have sadly reached the end of Favret-Saada, a text that reveals so much and conceals so much. I wish I wish she'd written 5 more books. She wrote one follow-up book to this that was never translated into English. And she said that this would be a part of a larger project. You can see as we get to the end of the book, she just says midway speculations. Well, she never gets all the way, in fact. So the book we read came out in 1980 in translation. And then in 2009, 30 years later, she put out a book called Des Sorcerelles or something like that, that was translated in English in 2015. Now, her midway speculations serve as an endpoint for us in this class, but you can go deeper if you wanted, and you could look at her book, The Anti-Witch, that I said was translated in English in 2015, but it came out in 2009. She argues here, right before she gives her final synopsis of this system, that everything is mere speculation. But I would argue that any argument, any academic argument in particular, is speculation, is speculative. We don't ever come to an end point. We're always still interpreting. These final speculations and their amazing diagrams, which just unfold so much, reveal the logics even of witchcraft. And they demonstrate that it's a rule-following, rule-based system. People may argue that the villagers are primitive, backwards, illogical, and irrational. But when you look at the system, it requires a fair bit of sophistication just to posit it. Let alone, I mean, it was handed down by tradition, but to posit it and to work with its nuances, that requires quite a bit of sophistication. So not unlike Evans Pritchard amongst the Azandi, Favret-Saada can say, wow, these people that we thought were so different from us are just as rational, but in different ways. So what are the limitations of her study? She, in fact, does not tell us about the details in the process of her own bewitching, or by which an unwitcher would work upon the Babans. The last we see of it is that the Babans are hanging out with Madame Formand and with the wife and whatnot, but we don't really get a resolution. Like I said, this book reveals so much and it conceals. What happened to Jean Baban? What happened? I mean, granted, this was all in like 1971, so I assume he's not alive right now. But what happened? We just don't know. And we don't know about the anti-witching process, though it is revealed in her 2009 book, The Anti-Witch. But I'm going to argue it's not as nuanced. It's not as detailed as I'd want. It has a lot of stuff on tarot cards and the use of tarot there, which is sort of fascinating. But it doesn't go as deep into the dynamics that we see reflected in Favret-Saada, which makes this book such a classic. It will haunt you a bit. Trust me. It will. You'll think about this for the rest of your life, maybe, or at least for the rest of your week. So anyway, she gets kind of to the end of things, and she says, I'm going to remove the drama of witch stories and really reduce things to logic. She says that she can reduce everything to these diagrams, this logical system. She says the drama of the witch battle is lost. Yet suddenly, I would argue, the whole structure gets clear. I mean, I get lost. Who's who? Why she call her Josephine at one point and Fiend at the other? I figured that out. Which Baban is which Madame from which? It's hard to keep track. I mean, some of you are probably pretty good at tracking that if you have good brains for memory. But on the other hand, some of us are just baffled. So she sets out these diagrams that depict everything in the witchcraft battle and the witchcraft onset. And finally, we're not looking at those weird heredity charts with circles and triangles and whatnot. And if you study anthropology, that stuff's your bread and butter. That's how you track kinship. There's actually a very regular and refined, defined way of setting out kinship charts like that crosses anthropological fields. So I would argue this way, when she puts out the diagrams, is way easier. It's clear. Suddenly all the details they fall away, and you can look at the diagram and go, oh, that's when Jean Baban was hit with by Rabot, but he got rid of Chicote by this and this, and you can kind of see it all in the diagrams. I mean, there's no accounting for taste, and I find the diagrams, especially the first time I read this book, I was trying to keep track of all these people, and I had no clue who was who and what was going on. But then I started reading the diagrams, And I'm reading the diagrams, and I'm reading her ultra clear writing. And then in the diagram, she has these like little, like pithy little descriptions of what's going on. When she describes the visible aspect and the non-visible aspect. I mean, we might even be willing to say the material and the religious or the spiritual, whatever the word spiritual means. But it just gets a lot clearer for me here. The thing is, we don't really know, however, what happens to people who are bewitched after they are unwitched. We don't know what their lives look like because Favret-Saada doesn't go into it. But she does give us this telling statement that the unwitcher keeps coming around, making rounds, sort of likely suggesting further services, making sure they don't get bewitched again. So in this way, the unwitcher sets up a patronage system so that their clients continue to be their clients even after they've been successfully unwitched. All right, let's take a break for a second here, and I'll get right back to you.